Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Boss Economics World, where we slice through bureaucratic buffoonery with a scalpel of undeniable logic and a dash of irreverence. Today, we're diving headfirst into the latest circus act unfolding in Berlin, a plan so grand, so laden with economic irony, that it makes you wonder if our political leaders learned fiscal management from a carnival barker. Strap in as we peel back the layers of this €200 billion, approximately $210 billion, defense spending proposal and reveal the underlying economic mess, all while critiquing the government's spectacular inability to manage its own house. At the center of this drama is Germany's soon-to-be Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who along with the Social Democrats, SPD, are allegedly hatching a plan to bypass Germany's ironclad restrictions on government borrowing. Yes, you heard that right, by extreme political maneuvering, they hope to inject a massive infusion of cash into the country's dilapidated military. This isn't just an upgrade, it's essentially an economic bull in a china shop, set loose without a second thought for Germany's fiscal well-being or the constitution's debt brake. In true political theater, Merz has promised robust investment in national defense to counter what he deems Russian aggression. However, one must ask, are these moves fueled by genuine strategic foresight, or is it merely a grandstanding performance designed to win votes in an election where fringe parties now hold the keys to a legislative blocking minority? In fact, this very minority, comprising members from both the far left and far right, exposes a deep-seated instability in coalition politics, offering a glaring example of political timidity where short-term political gains are prioritized over long-term fiscal responsibility. The economic implications, debt, yields, and fiscal folly. Let's talk Turkey. Germany's bond futures have already reacted to this looming fiscal decision. With the 10-year yield rising 11 basis points so far this year, now hovering around 2.48%, investors are clearly spooked by the prospect of even greater borrowing. This isn't just a minor fluctuation, it's a red flag that whispers fiscal irresponsibility into the ears of market watchers. And for good reason. Increasing government debt exponentially to cover defense spending in a time of economic uncertainty is akin to setting your house on fire and then renting a place while you brush the ashes away. Recent data from the Bundesbank and independent financial analysts indicate that Germany's borrowing costs are expected to increase significantly if this proposal is approved. With the yield on government bonds already on an upward trajectory, pushing through a bill of this magnitude could undermine investor confidence. This is particularly worrisome when closely observed by European central bank economists and global rating agencies who have repeatedly warned that excessive state borrowing, compounded by geopolitical uncertainties, could lead to a precarious fiscal environment. Country-level defense spending has always been a complex balancing act between security and fiscal prudence. However, Germany's current predicament seems to bypass this balancing act entirely. The proposal would double the previously approved fund from 3 years ago, an act that appears more as a desperate measure to catch up militarily than as a well-thought-out investment in future security. Certainly, the rationale offered by proponents is to counter external threats and bolster European defenses in light of a rapidly evolving geopolitical landscape, one where ex-US President Donald Trump's unpredictable foreign policy moves and Vladimir Putin's grandstanding continue to stoke international tensions. But there's an inherent irony here. While our European counterparts debate the merit of quickly finalizing a peace deal for Ukraine, an agenda pushed with considerable zeal by US political hawks, Germany appears to be throwing fiscal caution to the wind. Instead of addressing the deep-seated economic scarcities exacerbated by systemic mismanagement and rigid constitutional constraints, decision-makers are opting for an expensive cat-and-mouse game with the global bond markets. The inherent risk being that, in the search for rapid national security enhancements, fiscal discipline might end up being the sacrificial lamb. Germany's debt brake is not just a mild inconvenience in the policymaker's handbook, it is enshrined in the country's constitution. Designed to ensure fiscal stability and prevent runaway deficits, this rule is now being toyed with as political forces desperately scramble to secure a two-thirds supermajority vote. Critics argue, and with good reason, that such a maneuver not only sets a dangerous precedent for fiscal management but also erodes the foundational principles that have, until now, preserved Germany's robust economic reputation. The debate about whether to convene an emergency parliamentary session, as referenced by outgoing Chancellor Olaf Scholz, hints at the urgency and recklessness behind this push. Historical comparisons are being drawn with past crises, such as the decisions made during the NATO intervention in the Balkans in 1998. However, it is worth noting that the geopolitical stakes have never been higher, and the economic foundations are now more brittle than ever. With potential repercussions for decades, the misuse of constitutional tools in favor of short-term defense spending could usher in a new era of fiscal imprudence. Germany is not an island, economically or politically. The reverberations of its fiscal decisions are felt across the entire European Union and even beyond. Consider this, if Germany, the continent's economic powerhouse, begins circumventing its stringent borrowing rules in pursuit of defense spending, what message does this send to other moderate economies? There is a palpable risk that this could initiate a domino effect, where nations begin to relax fiscal standards, thereby increasing the overall risk profile of the Eurozone. Already, member states like Italy and Spain have wrestled with high debt levels. Adding Germany, or worse, its allies, into the mix could precipitate an escalating fiscal crisis. The reaction from the bond market has been immediate. As mentioned, German bond futures have dropped, with yields creeping higher, a clear signal of investor anxiety. The yield on Germany's 10-year bonds, now at 2.48%, is a canary in the coal mine, warning that creditor confidence is waning. Macroeconomic indicators and recent market studies suggest that such moves, if not carefully managed, might lead to decreased credit ratings and higher borrowing costs, ultimately strangling economic growth across the board. It is important to consider that defense spending, while undoubtedly essential in times of geopolitical uncertainty, must be balanced against the need to invest in public infrastructure, healthcare, education, and technological advancement. The current proposal, ballooning to a staggering €200 billion, represents a radical reprioritization of governmental expenditure. This begs the question, are we sacrificing long-term economic stability for short-term military might? Recent economic forecasts from institutions such as the International Monetary Fund, IMF, and the European Commission have painted a bleak picture of global growth, which has been further hampered by post-pandemic recovery challenges, inflationary pressures, and supply chain disruptions. In this context, channeling such a massive sum into defense spending could inadvertently stifle domestic investment and exacerbate the ongoing recessionary trends within the EU. Faced with a fragile recovery, Germany's electorate might soon find that their tax revenues, already under pressure from global economic headwinds, are being funneled into an arguably misaligned set of priorities. No discussion of this debacle would be complete without addressing the external pressures that have seemingly dictated Germany's policy direction. Former U.S. President Donald Trump's recent maneuvers, ranging from coaxing Russia into diplomatic dialogues to urging European nations to guarantee Ukraine's security, have created an environment where heightened military spending appears almost inevitable. Yet, one must ask, is this a cautious response to external threats, or is it a capitulation to global pressure that is forcing Germany into a fiscal corner? The specter of Trump's unpredictable geopolitical tactics looms large over the decision-making process. Meanwhile, European leaders, such as French President Emmanuel Macron and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, are embroiled in their own high-stakes diplomatic engagements. These external pressures, coupled with internal fiscal constraints, have created a policy maelstrom that not only jeopardizes national economic security but also risks undermining the collective European resolve. Germany, in trying to navigate this geopolitical labyrinth, might well be setting itself, and by extension, the entire EU, on a collision course with fiscal instability. What does this all mean for the average taxpayer or a seasoned economist watching from the sidelines? It's a comprehensive case study in ironic inconsistency. On one hand, you have traditional economic doctrine that preaches fiscal responsibility, balanced budgets, and sustainable growth. On the other, you have political actors who, faced with imminent geopolitical pressures and internal electoral challenges, opt for a reckless gamble by overstepping constitutional limits to funnel billions into defense spending. This isn't just a matter of political point scoring. It's an issue that will have long-lasting repercussions on Germany's economic health and its standing in the international financial community. As governments wrestle with the twin demands of national security and fiscal discipline, one thing remains clear: the road to economic recovery is paved with prudent investment, not with massive, ill-planned injections of debt-monetized spending. In conclusion, the current debacle in Germany isn't merely an isolated policy misstep. It is symptomatic of broader systemic issues, failures in governance, short-term political expediency over long-term economic strategy, and an over-reliance on thematic rhetoric that distracts from fiscal fundamentals. As the Bundestag contemplates whether to reconvene for an emergency session or force through a contentious vote before the new legislature is sworn in, there is a real and present danger that economic stability will be sacrificed at the altar of political expediency. Friedrich Merz and his cohorts should take heed of the lessons from past fiscal crises, both within Germany and globally. Spending sprees financed by bending constitutional norms may offer temporary political relief or satisfy external pressures, but history teaches us that long-term economic health is built on stable, predictable, and prudent fiscal policies. The markets have already shown their discontent by reacting negatively to the potential for more borrowing. Should this plan succeed, the domino effect could lead to a significant loss of investor confidence, higher bond yields, and potentially, a crisis of fiscal sustainability that might reverberate well beyond Germany's borders. For the ordinary citizen, the message is clear: keep a close watch on where your hard-earned taxes are going. For professionals in finance, the caution is equally stark: retreat from positions that assume unchecked government borrowing will be met with regulatory and fiscal common sense. And for our political leaders, the lesson is both simple and sobering: long-term economic stewardship must trump short-term political maneuvering. Here at Boss Economics World, we're committed to exposing these farcical policy choices and holding power to account. As always, stay sharp, stay informed, and remember, the economy may be a complex behemoth, but rational and measured economic policy is the only antidote to political buffoonery. Until next time, keep your eyes on the data and your hand firmly on the pulse of economic reality.